If you offered me $200 million to pretend to be the boyfriend of a beautiful CEO for 3 months, would I take it? And if, after the contract ended, the CEO suddenly wanted to make it real, tie me to the bed, and forcefully claim me, could I keep my virtue? 3 days ago, I took a job pretending to be a boyfriend. As soon as I arrived at the villa's gate, I saw the woman who hired me, Katniss Everdeen, sitting on the sofa, looking up directly at me. Are you James Bond? Her gaze was probing. I didn't bother with formalities. I walked to the living room sofa, sat down, and nodded. From a distance earlier, but now up close, I could see that the woman who hired me was indeed very beautiful. Mr. Bond, staring at a woman for so long, isn't that a bit rude? Katniss shot me a cold glance, her voice betraying a hint of dissatisfaction. I didn't avert my eyes, staring directly at Katniss's exquisitely made-up face, a knowing smile playing on my lips. Everdeen, if you want me to be your fake boyfriend, how can I not remember what you look like? Katniss gave a faint, fleeting smile. You get into character quickly. It's normal to work for money. Since I've paid $200 million, what's impossible? Katniss stared at me a few more times before asking, Mr. Bond, is this your specialty? Not really. First time. Then that's strange. You seem quite familiar with it. Katniss said with a hint of sarcasm. Frankly, Katniss still thought he must have been a gigolo before. I understood her implication, but didn't bother to address it. Isn't this just like hiring a fake boyfriend or girlfriend to take home for the holidays? I haven't done it, but I've heard of it. So, what did you do before? Katniss asked subconsciously. What do you mean? Anything and everything. Katniss frowned slightly. I've delivered goods, waited tables, fixed water meters, worked as a salesman, unclogged drains. If you think those jobs are beneath me, I've also done some more high-class work, like being a psychological therapist, a martial arts coach for the wealthy, and a chef at a luxury hotel. I was talking enthusiastically, but Katniss grew increasingly impatient. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore, raising her hand to interrupt me. Stop. Shut up. I froze, looking at her in confusion. Are you trying to make me laugh? Katniss leaned forward, her eyes sharp as knives, her voice tinged with anger. She suddenly regretted her decision. This person in front of me looks completely untrustworthy. Will he be able to fool my parents? I'm only telling the truth. Facing Katniss's cold gaze, I showed no panic. Katniss placed a stack of documents on the table, glancing at me. These are my personal documents. Tried to memorize them within 3 days. I took the thick stack of documents, my face showing surprise. These are personal documents. Damn, it's as thick as a book. Memorize all of this in 3 days. Katniss folded her arms, leaning back on the sofa, her tone playfully mocking. Aren't you a jack of all trades? Can't even memorize documents. Giving up so soon. If you really can't do it, I can find someone else. Give it to Mad. 3 days. Just 3 days. Hearing Katniss threaten to replace me, I immediately pounded my chest in assurance. She'd paid $200 million. Memorizing a few documents was nothing. As for my documents, I haven't prepared them yet. If you want. Before I could finish, Katniss interrupted. No need for your documents. I've already seen them. I didn't ask any further questions, lowering my head to read Katniss's documents. Katniss Everdeen, female, 26 years old, height 5'8", weight 121 lbs. Reading this, I couldn't help but look up at the beautiful woman opposite me. Her figure was perfectly proportioned. Seeing Katniss's cold gaze sweep over me, I wasn't afraid. I returned a provocative look, and continued to read the documents. The more I read, the more astonished I became. This woman was truly exceptional. At only 26, with her keen business sense and decisive ability, she had built an empire in the cutthroat business world, with assets approaching billions. The company under her name was a leader in its industry, true business magnate. Meanwhile, I, at 25, had not only saved no money but also owed friends and family $50,000 to treat my parents' illnesses. Compared to her, I have felt vastly inferior. When I took this job, I found it strange that she'd pay $200 million just to pretend to be a boyfriend. Now that I knew Katniss's true identity, I immediately understood. $200 million was probably just pocket change to her. At this point, Katniss took out another contract from her bag. Read this contract. If there are no issues, sign it. I took the contract, and read it carefully. No going to the second floor of the villa, or money will be deducted. What if you call me up? Katniss frowned slightly. I won't call you up. What if there's a special circumstance? Since it involved deductions, I had to be serious. Katniss looked at my serious demeanor, remained silent for a moment, and then said, special circumstances don't count. Satisfied with the answer, I didn't dwell on it further, pointing to another clause. It states here that our relationship is employer-employee. I have no objection. But I must say upfront, you are not to arbitrarily insult or demean me. If I don't even have basic dignity, I can't do this job. Katniss was both angry and amused. Am I choosing you, or are you choosing me? Of course we're choosing each other. Is my request unreasonable? Isn't it the most basic? Katniss showed a hint of impatience. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of shrew. Good. Then I won't hesitate. I picked up the pen and signed my name. Seeing me sign the last stroke, Katniss sat up straight. Good. From now on, you're officially in character. What to say, what to do will teach you gradually. You must remember carefully. I raised my hand in a gesture. Okay, don't worry, Miss Averton. The words had barely left my mouth when Katniss's cold gaze, sharp as a sword, shot towards me. I quickly raised my hands, explaining rapidly, don't get agitated. I know my identity has changed now, and I need to change how I address you, but I really don't know what to call you. I was just trying to ask if I should call you Katniss, or a kitten, or even Honey, darling. Katniss's expression, which had just softened, immediately turned cold again. Some couples even called each other Little Piggy these days. Shut up. That's disgusting. Katniss couldn't stand it anymore. Jumping up and shouting, what kind of names are those? They make my skin crawl. Having navigated the business world for years, Katniss had faced countless dirty tricks from rivals, and never felt disgusted. But a few words from James Bond had made her lose her composure. Meanwhile, I looked up at Katniss, utterly bewildered. I was kindly offering suggestions, and you call me disgusting. What kind of logic is that? From now on, don't say those cheesy, disgusting things in front of me, or you can get out. Katniss roared in anger. I said nothing more, walking straight to the main door without hesitation. This was unbelievable. The person who introduced me to this job said the client was gentle and easygoing. Seeing me head straight for the door, Katniss was momentarily stunned. She hadn't expected me to be so firm, just like that. Seeing me about to step out the door, Katniss quickly called out, "Stop." I still didn't stop, as if I hadn't heard her, and walked straight out. But the very next second, I was blocked at the door by a group of people. Looking at the tall, burly bodyguards in front of me, I gave a forced smile and slowly retreated back into the house. Katniss snorted coldly, a hint of disdain in her eyes. What's the meaning of this? You won't let me leave. The contract has been signed. Do you think you can still leave? Katniss smiled faintly. Fine. So, what should I call you? This woman's gentleness and affability were fake. Her domineering and cold nature was real. Katniss stared at me for a moment, then slowly said, "Call me Katniss." Okay, Katniss. I put my hands in my pockets, turned, and walked towards a room. Where are you going? Katniss's voice suddenly rang out. To my room, of course. Do you need something else? I turned to look at her. My voice casual. Katniss said indifferently, go take a shower, then come out with me. We have to go somewhere. First day and there's already work. My eyes showed surprise. Don't ask so many questions. Just do your job. Katniss's face was full of dissatisfaction. Normally, those around her were always obedient. James Bond's questioning attitude made her extremely uncomfortable. I pouted, said nothing more, and leisurely walked back to the room. In the living room, Katniss let out a long sigh of relief. Accustomed to others being respectful, she found it a bit unsettling to encounter someone so unyielding. Aside from my appearance and figure being to her aesthetic liking, my first impression in her eyes wasn't good at all. A woman in business attire suddenly approached, bending down carefully to whisper in Katniss's ear. Everdeen, Mr. Darcy of the Netherfield Group has sent another invitation, saying he wants to discuss business with you. Hearing the name Mr. Darcy, Katniss's usually calm face immediately turned icy. Fitzwilliam Darcy, the only son of the chairman of Pemberley Corporation, was a typical playboy. Thanks to his family's influence, he had bullied many men and women. Recently, he had set his sights on Katniss. Tell him I don't have time for such frivolous games. And in the future, you don't need to report such matters to me. Just refuse him directly. If it weren't for his father's reputation, Katniss would have dealt with him long ago. I understand. The woman in business attire nodded and left. In the bedroom, I stripped off my clothes, grabbed a clean set, and prepared to enter the bathroom. But just then, my door was forcefully pushed open from outside. James Bond, are you really that slow taking a shower? Do you know how precious my time is? Katniss's voice suddenly stopped. Her eyes were suddenly fixed on my naked body. The dissatisfaction on her beautiful face instantly turned to daze. Her entire body froze in place. Not only was she stunned, but I was even more stunned than her. What was happening? Why did Katniss just barge in? I used my clothes to cover my body. You didn't knock before coming in. Katniss's face was slightly red, and she angrily shouted, "You pervert. Why aren't you wearing clothes?" With that, without waiting for me to explain, she turned and slammed the door shut. My eyes widened, and the corner of my mouth twitched slightly. Outside the room, after closing the door, Katniss angrily walked to the living room sofa and sat down. At this moment, this woman's mood was extremely restless. "That pervert," Katniss muttered, her face flushed. Solid chest, well-defined abs, every muscle full of power. I have to admit, that guy's physique is really not bad. As this thought flashed, Katniss immediately shook her head, her face showing panic and surprise. Katniss Everdeen's man could absolutely not be someone like James Bond. A few minutes later, I walked out into the living room and saw Katniss sitting on the sofa, her face cold. I said, "Let's go. Didn't you say we had to go out?" Katniss slowly looked up, her eyes like sharp blades shooting towards me. Her movement made me feel uncomfortable all over, and I immediately couldn't stand it, speaking impatiently. "Ms. Everdeen, what's the meaning of this again? You're the one who barged into my room without knocking. You're the one who saw all of me, and now you're the one throwing a tantrum. Is this some kind of 360-degree defense strategy?" The words had just left my mouth when Katniss suddenly stood up from the sofa, her body trembling with anger. "Shut up, keep what just happened to yourself. Don't mention it again. Not a single word." I shrugged, my expression indifferent. Who cares to mention it? I'm the one who got the short end of the stick here. If others knew, where would my virtue be? Hearing me say that, Katniss clenched her fists in anger, wanting to rush up and punch this scoundrel. "Aren't we going yet? You seemed to be in such a hurry just now." Katniss grabbed her handbag and walked straight out. This woman's temper really was awful. I followed behind her. Outside the villa, a black Bentley was parked at the gate. I opened the back door and got in. "Where are we going? Why do you ask so many questions?" Katniss frowned. "Katniss, you told me to get into character. A girlfriend takes her boyfriend out. The boyfriend curiously asks a question. What's wrong with that?" Without waiting for Katniss to reply, I continued, "As I see it, you're the one who hasn't gotten into character yet, not me." Katniss stared at me, her face expressionless. "Am I wrong?" After a moment, Katniss snorted softly, telling the driver to drive to the city center. Half an hour later, Katniss got out of the car and led me straight to a high-end fashion store. She casually pointed at me and said, "According to his physique, pick out 7 outfits." As soon as these words were spoken, I was immediately stunned. She was going to buy me clothes. Katniss seemed to read my thoughts, a slight sneer playing on her lips. "You're paying, so why should I hesitate?" Without another word, I followed the store clerk. When I emerged from the fitting room wearing a finely tailored dark blue suit, my entire demeanor had changed. The casual image I had earlier instantly became refined, combined with my chiseled face and captivating deep eyes. I looked like a noble gentleman straight out of a fashion magazine. Katniss, who had initially been full of disdain, also showed a momentary look of surprise when she saw me. For a moment, she stared blankly. "How does it look? Do you need me to change?" I slowly walked up to Katniss, spreading my arms. Since it was her money, of course, I had to listen to her opinion. Katniss showed a hint of awkwardness, trying to hide her momentary lapse, and quickly returned to her initial cold, distant demeanor. She tilted her chin slightly, her voice indifferent. "It's acceptable. No need to change." About an hour later, the 7 outfits were finally chosen. When paying, seeing the bill was nearly $100,000, I couldn't help but be startled. Money really disappeared quickly. But this woman, Katniss, swiped her card without batting an eye, as calmly as if she were eating or drinking. In the car, I couldn't help but ask, "You're dressing me like this, so we must be going to some event, right?" This time, Katniss answered directly, "There's a cocktail party tonight. You're coming with me. Don't be nervous. I'll handle everything." In her eyes, no matter how well groomed James Bond might be, his essence was probably still that of an ordinary person. Facing the prominent figures at tonight's party, he would surely feel intimidated. She considered this a preemptive reassurance. I just smiled and said nothing. At 800 p.m., in the grand ballroom of a luxurious hotel in Gotham City, a spectacular cocktail party was underway. The guests were all influential figures in Gotham. I even saw a few third or fourth-tier actors. Seeing this scene, I suddenly remembered my ex-girlfriend, who, wanting to become a star, decisively abandoned me. People say that to climb the ladder, the first person you cut is your lover. Lois Lane was even better. She cut me, James Bond, her lover, before climbing her way up. Now, Lois Lane is a sensation in showbiz, starring in several hit movies. Thinking of this, a bitter smile appeared on my lips, and I shook my head helplessly. It was all in the past. What was the point of thinking about it now? Suddenly, a glass of red wine was offered to me. What are you doing standing there blankly? Are you scared? Katniss frowned, asking in a low voice. I composed myself, reached out, and took the wine glass, gracefully taking a sip. Too much drama. I'm fine. Katniss looked at me for a moment, until someone came to greet her. Severtine, long time no see. You're as radiant as ever. A middle-aged woman in a yellow dress approached, speaking while casually glancing at me a few times, her eyes showing a hint of scrutiny. Katniss turned her head, a polite smile immediately appearing on her face, and replied, My sis Cruella de Vil, you flatter me. The two exchanged a few simple pleasantries. After a while, the middle-aged woman changed the subject, suddenly bringing me up. She tilted her head, a friendly smile on her face. And who is this? Katniss naturally linked her arm through mine, leaning intimately against me. This is my boyfriend, James Bond. After saying this, she turned to look at me, her eyes showing a hint of tenderness. This is Cruella de Vil, the CEO of Dalmatian Media. Mrs. de Vil's eyes flashed with a hint of peculiarity. She extended her hand, her voice gentle. Nice to meet you, Mr. Bond. I politely extended my hand, lightly shaking hers. In the brief moment of contact, I clearly felt Cruella's fingers lightly brush against my palm. My heart skipped a beat, but my expression remained unchanged. I gave Cruella a meaningful look. She, taking advantage of Katniss's distraction, secretly shot me a flirtatious glance. Everdeen, I'm going to meet a friend for a moment. We'll talk later. Katniss subtly curved her lips, a polite smile appearing, and merely nodded. Okay, you go ahead. I leaned close to Katniss and whispered, This woman is not normal. She just rubbed her hand against my palm and gave me a flirtatious look. Katniss didn't even frown, calmly replying, I know. I was slightly stunned. You know. Hell. Katniss gave a teasing smile, snorting lightly through her nose, her voice full of disdain. She's the CEO of a media company. She has a ton of young men under her, a different one every day, never repeating. You're somewhat attractive. It's not strange for her to secretly flirt with you when I'm not paying attention. Hearing Katniss use the phrase somewhat attractive to describe me, my face immediately darkened. Is that really a phrase to use for a man? Katniss coldly watched Cruella, who was laughing and talking with a few men not far away, her eyes flashing with a cold glint. It wasn't that she was jealous, but Cruella's actions were tantamount to disrespecting her. She secretly thought of ways to retaliate. After a while, people continuously approached Katniss, glasses of wine in hand, smiling brightly. When they learned that Katniss and I were a couple, everyone reacted as if they had discovered a new continent, curious about my identity. I simply said I was a researcher, and they didn't ask further questions. Of course, whether they believed it or not was their business. Finally escaping the crowd, Katniss stopped, turning her head slightly to look at me with a mocking expression. You're a researcher, really? Her voice clearly carried a hint of doubt. Isn't psychological research still research? Katniss contemptuously pouted, casually asking, Then tell me, what am I thinking? I looked straight into Katniss's eyes, slowly moving closer. Earlier, when you were talking to Cruella, you kept your arms crossed and maintained a certain distance in communication, which shows that you are very wary of her, or simply don't like her. And since Cruella left, you've looked at her a total of 31 times. Each time, a hint of malice flashed in your eyes. I guess you've already thought of a few ways to deal with Cruella, haven't you? After hearing my detailed analysis, Katniss's usually calm face unconsciously showed a look of surprise. Am I right? Seeing Katniss's reaction, I smiled. Katniss slightly narrowed her eyes, pursing her lips, carefully assessing the handsome man in front of her, then asked again, So, what do you think I'll do? I smiled mysteriously, and leaned closer to her ear again. Katniss really smelled good. Want to know? I am not telling. Seeing my playful expression, Katniss was so angry she almost exploded, wanting to punch this guy right there. This scoundrel was truly deserving of a beating, but there were so many people around. Katniss couldn't conveniently get angry, so she just glared at me, but the very next second, Katniss's eyes suddenly softened, and her face suddenly lit up. I was still wondering why this woman was looking at me with that expression. Had her personality changed? But immediately, a figure rushed from behind, throwing herself directly into Katniss's arms. Looking closely, it was a girl in a light blue dress, her hair tied in 2 pigtails. Sister Katniss, I finally get to see you again. Studying abroad was so boring. Pansy Parkinson hugged Katniss's neck, pouting with a soft voice. This voice made me, standing nearby, freeze. Wasn't this the legendary squeaky voice? It was so sickeningly sweet, overly cloying. Looking at Pansy's attire, especially her long white socks and small black leather shoes. Come on, Pansy, everyone's looking. Katniss smiled, patting her back. Pansy suddenly turned her head, and when her eyes met mine, her expression froze, and her pretty face flushed slightly, looking a bit shy. When I clearly saw Pansy's face, I was also slightly stunned. Beautiful women accompany beautiful women. This saying was truly not wrong. Miss Lolita-style girl had a clear, pure face, but her figure was like a supermodel's. Those prominent breasts were the most magnificent I had ever seen, without rival. Even Katniss couldn't compare. They had to be at least in cup. Pansy noticed my gaze, feeling a little unnatural, and leaned closer to Katniss, whispering, Sister Katniss, who is this? Katniss very naturally introduced the two of us. When I learned that Pansy was the daughter of the chairman of the Hogsmeade Group, a major player in Gotham's tourism industry, I wasn't surprised. After all, someone close to Katniss couldn't have an ordinary background. But when Pansy learned that I was Katniss's boyfriend, she was so astonished that her jaw almost dropped, her face full of disbelief. She turned to look at Katniss, her eyes carrying a hint of reproach and coquettishness. Sister Katniss, didn't you say we would enjoy this single life together? How could you secretly find a boyfriend like this? It's too much. A helpless, bitter smile appeared on Katniss's exquisite face. She sighed softly and said, You know my situation. My parents are really pushing me. Hearing this, Pansy gently linked her arm through Katniss's, pouting like a little girl. She pulled Katniss aside, not forgetting to secretly glance at me a few times, to a relatively quiet corner. The two of them whispered to each other, occasionally letting out soft laughter. I looked at the two girls blankly, but from their eyes, they were clearly talking about me. I didn't bother, walking straight to the drinks table to eat some pastries to fill my stomach. People came to cocktail parties for business and networking. I had nothing to do, so I just ate and drank to my heart's content. But just as I was enjoying my food, across the ballroom, a slick-haired, thin man was staring at me with gloomy eyes. This person was Draco Malfoy, the one who had repeatedly harassed Katniss recently, harboring strong intentions towards her. Draco had originally thought this cocktail party was a great opportunity to get closer to Katniss. But when he saw Katniss arm in arm with a strange man, his expression immediately turned ugly, as if he had swallowed a fly. He had always monitored Katniss's every move and had never heard of her being intimate with any other man. How could she suddenly have a boyfriend? The more he thought, the more wrong it felt. He decided this guy's identity was definitely problematic. So he discreetly inquired among those around him and quickly learned my name and profession. James Bond, a researcher. Draco looked at the tall figure in the distance, a cold smile playing on his lips. He leaned close to his subordinate and quickly whispered something. The subordinate's face immediately turned ugly. Young master, we don't fully know the opponent's identity yet. If we act rashly and make a mistake, what if it causes big trouble? Draco, hearing this, was so angry he burst into flames, raising his hand and slapping his subordinate hard on the head. You idiot. In this vast Gotham City, have you ever heard of a James Bond? The subordinate was hit, tilting his head, clutching his head in grievance. It's obvious Katniss just randomly found a man to be a shield. What are you afraid of? On the other side, I was eating pastries and sipping red wine. Pansy, appearing out of nowhere, suddenly ran over, her face full of curiosity, and quietly asked me, Mr. Bond, Sister Katniss said you know everything. Is that true? Hearing her call me Mr. Bond, I felt goosebumps all over. This girl's voice was truly too sweet, too cloying, like sugar water with too much honey, sickeningly sweet, making me feel uncomfortable all over. How old are you to call me Mr. Bond? I tried to suppress my discomforts. I turned to glance at her, and asked. I really only dared to glance once. Looking any longer made me want to explode, because my eyes unconsciously drifted towards those prominent breasts. I'm 25. You must be older than me, right? Pansy blinked her big eyes, patting her chest. What a coincidence. I'm 25 too. Pansy widened her eyes, slightly surprised, and asked, Same age. So who's older? I secretly glanced at her, my eyes showing a hint of awkwardness, and unconsciously said, You're definitely older. At this moment, Katniss also walked over and heard my words, looking at both of us strangely. What's bigger? My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly explained. We were talking about age. Katniss frowned, looking at me with suspicion, as if judging the truthfulness of my words. Then her eyes sharpened, giving me a warning look, as if to say, you better be honest. I shrugged, walked past the two girls, and headed out of the ballroom. Katniss thought I was going to abandon the job again and quickly stepped forward to block me, asking somewhat angrily, where are you going? Where's your professional ethics? Seeing Katniss's anxious look, I suddenly found it a bit amusing and teased, I'm going to the men's restroom. Or do you want to come with me? As soon as these words came out, Katniss's beautiful face immediately darkened, her eyes flashing with anger. She bit her lip, suppressing her rage. Get back here immediately. After I left, Pansy, like a cheerful little bunny, immediately leaned close to Katniss, her eyes sparkling with curiosity, eagerly asking, Sister Katniss, is this really the person you hired with money? He looked quite good, doesn't he? Hearing Pansy say that, Katniss immediately frowned, her face serious as she told Pansy, Pansy, you should try to stay away from this guy. Don't get too close. Pansy looked completely baffled, her big, sparkling eyes blinking repeatedly. Sister Katniss, why? Katniss parted her lips, paused for a moment, and then said, he's not a good person. Just listen to me. I guarantee you won't go wrong. After hearing this, Pansy pouted her lips in grievance. At that moment, I was in the hallway and unexpectedly sneezed. Which lovely lady was thinking of me? I quickly arrived at the men's room door. A man in a crisp suit looked like he had been waiting for a long time. Seeing me, he stepped forward, immediately breaking into a warm smile to greet me. Sir, the restroom on this floor is out of order and temporarily unavailable. Let me guide you to another floor. With that, he bowed slightly and made an inviting gesture. I casually glanced at the restroom and saw an under repair sign hanging on the door. Not thinking much of it, I followed the man to the restroom on the floor below. But as soon as I stepped inside, my sharp intuition told me something was wrong. Inside, 3 men were looking at me coldly, their eyes filled with a frosty gaze as if they had been deliberately waiting for me here. Draco Malfoy stood in the middle, his hands in his pockets, looking up at me at a 45-degree angle, his face full of contempt. Are you James Bond? I frowned slightly, a hint of suspicion in my eyes. And who are you? Draco Malfoy of Malfoy Corp. Hearing the name, I almost couldn't help but laugh, thinking of a rooster. Draco didn't notice my strange reaction, the cold smile on his lips growing wider. Did, I know you're just a shield Katniss Everdeen hired. But since you dared to take on this mess, and openly oppose me, don't blame me for being ruthless. After speaking, he gave a subtle glance to his 2 henchmen. Then, he sauntered off, thinking he was very cool, slowly exiting the restroom and taking the elevator back to the party hall. He walked over to where Katniss was. Pansy was telling an interesting story about her time studying abroad. Katniss was listening intently when a voice she found utterly repulsive sounded in her ear. Psst, Everdeen, there you are. They've been looking for you all evening. Are you free after the party? A new restaurant just opened, how about we go try it? Draco pretended to be a gentleman, asking softly. But no matter how much Draco faked it, Katniss knew his true character all too well, her eyes showing unconcealed disgust. Draco, are we that close? Your father's reputation doesn't mean much to me. Besides, I already have a boyfriend. If you keep pestering me, don't blame me for turning nasty. But hearing Katniss's warning, Draco wasn't scared at all. In fact, the corner of his mouth curled up into a slight smile. Psst, Everdeen, why the pointless carry? That James Bond fellow is just someone you hired. How could he possibly be your boyfriend? Katniss's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, a cold glint flashing within. What nonsense are you spouting? You'll pay a price for talking recklessly. Draco, thinking himself clever, began to lay out his analysis. Someone with your excellent conditions, from appearance and temperament to family background, should at least be acquainted with elites or young talents. But this name, James Bond, I've never heard of it. Moreover, a few days ago when I invited you to dinner, Miss Everdeen, you didn't say you had a boyfriend. How come you suddenly have one in the last 2 days? As soon as he said this, the atmosphere around them instantly grew cold. A look of anger appeared on Katniss's exquisite face. She said in a low voice, since when is my private life any of your business? It seems Malfoy Corp's business has been going too smoothly lately, which is why you have so much free time. My father fully supports my pursuit of you. The words had just left his mouth when a large hand suddenly clamped down on his shoulder. Hey, pretty boy, this is my spot. You seem to be standing in the wrong place. Before Draco could even see who it was, he was forcefully pulled to the side, stumbling to regain his balance. Looking closely, he saw it was me, James Bond. He was immediately stunned. How was James Bond here? Impossible. The strength of my henchmen. Draco knew very well that two of them together couldn't take down James Bond. I clapped my hands, straightened my slightly ruffled collar and sleeves, and smiled at Katniss. Well, I wasn't too late, was I? Before Katniss could speak, Pansy pouted and snorted. Not late. Someone was trying to steal your girl. You almost lost your girlfriend. I glanced at Draco, a cold glint in my eyes, and was about to speak when Draco hastily took 2 steps back, a bit wary. I really underestimated you. Just you wait. With that, the guy ran off. That guy sure can run. Watching Draco's pathetic retreating figure, I couldn't help but curse. Katniss's eyes were filled with scrutiny and doubt. Where did you go to get into this mess? And what did Draco mean just now? I gave a bitter smile and told Katniss everything that had just happened in the restroom. You took down 2 of them by yourself without getting hurt. After hearing my story, Katniss's face showed a look of astonishment, as if she were seeing me for the first time. Pansy, on the other hand, looked at me with adoration, her eyes sparkling like stars. Who said I wasn't hurt? My whole body is itching, I said, dramatically rubbing my shoulder with a pained expression, starting to play the victim. Katniss, you two should pay me some medical fees. I might as well try to get what I could. After all, this woman wasn't short on cash. Katniss snorted lightly, pretending not to hear, a playful smile on her face. You beat up Draco's men. Aren't you afraid of his revenge? Before I could open my mouth, the busty, Lolita-stoled Pansy jumped in. Sister Katniss, James Bond only got into a conflict with Draco because of you. You can't just abandon him. Pansy held Katniss's hand, her pouting voice filled with genuine concern. Katniss rolled her eyes at Pansy in disbelief, her gaze seeming to say, whose side are you on? Why are you defending an outsider? I didn't expect Pansy to speak up for me either, especially since we had just met. Pansy's right. You promised to take care of everything for me. Where's your credibility as an employer? With someone backing me up, I seized the opportunity to press on. Seeing us both ganging up on her, Katniss snorted coldly. Fine, I never said I was abandoning you. I'll handle the Draco situation. You don't need to worry. Katniss wasn't a heartless person. With her guarantee, I felt much more at ease. After all, the opponent's background was not simple. Katniss took out her phone from her bag and walked outside with a grim face. Seeing this, Pansy said, a bit excitedly and resentfully, yeah, Sister Katniss is definitely going to chew out that old man, Mr. Malfoy. Who does his son think he is? Just because he can't win Katniss's heart. He wants to lay a hand on my dear James Bond. After venting, Pansy seemed to remember something, her eyes lighting up. She excitedly leaned close to me. James Bond, you're so amazing. Have you practiced some kind of super martial art? Looking at Pansy's innocent and cute appearance, I couldn't help but chuckle softly. Actually, it's nothing that impressive. I just liked boxing as a kid and practiced for a few years. I didn't expect it to come in handy today. The words had just left my mouth when I suddenly felt a soft and incredibly pleasant sensation on my arm. I instinctively looked down. Oh my god, it turned out Pansy had, at some point, pressed herself against my arm. After hesitating for exactly 1 second, I decisively pulled my arm away. I wasn't some kind of creep. The key issue was that this was a public place. Many people now knew that I, James Bond, was Katniss Everdeen's boyfriend. If someone saw Katniss's boyfriend being intimate with another girl, the gossip mongers would surely spread rumors behind our backs. Moreover, Katniss had hired me as a fake boyfriend mainly to deal with her parents' urgent marriage pressure. So, at least in name, no matter what, I couldn't be too close to any girl other than Katniss. And what about in private? Katniss's contract stated, both parties will not interfere in each other's private lives. Pansy, can you keep a little distance? After all, I am your sister Katniss's boyfriend. You can't. Before I could finish, Pansy bluntly interrupted me. Stop acting. Sister Katniss told me everything. You're the shield she hired with money. Pansy blinked her big, round eyes, her expression full of mischief. I was immediately stunned. I didn't expect Katniss to tell Pansy about this. But I quickly regained my composure and said, a bit awkwardly, even so, it's not appropriate. No matter what, I'm still nominally your sister Katniss's boyfriend. I have to maintain this relationship properly to avoid causing her trouble. Pansy, however, seemed to not care at all, even jiggling as if she had expected me to say that. I saw her quickly take out her phone. Let's add each other as friends first. I'll need to find you in a few days. Find me for what? Can you help me teach someone a lesson? Pansy lowered her voice mysteriously. No, they said, almost reflexively refusing without a second thought. Why not? I'll pay you. Hearing my refusal, Pansy immediately got anxious, stomping her foot in her delicate leather shoes, and said petulantly. As she stomped, the fabric of her dress billowed like ocean waves, surging powerfully. The scene immediately reminded me of some pictures I had seen online. Pansy saw me staring at her chest a few times, and her face immediately turned red with a bit of embarrassment. But she still mustered up the courage to say, how about this? As long as you agree to my request, I'll let you look. I stared in amazement at the cute girl in front of me. Look at what? Even a kiss wouldn't be enough. Maybe if you sacrificed your body. Oh my god, I was just kidding. Don't take it seriously. Pansy was so embarrassed her face turned completely red, her voice becoming much softer. She didn't know why she had been so impulsive to say such a thing. I gave a bitter smile and shook my head helplessly. I'm not a professional bodyguard. For teaching people a lesson, you should find someone else. I'm not free, and don't want to bring myself more trouble. If you refuse, I'll tell Sister Katniss that you were staring at my chest. Pansy dropped the act and threatened me directly. Hearing her say that, I was immediately dumbfounded. I quickly put some distance between us, and said, hey, don't talk nonsense, or I'll sue you for slander. I only glanced a few times, okay. It was just an accidental glance. I don't care. You have to go with me. Pansy pouted her rosy lips and snorted. At this point, I was truly helpless. Go where? A cold voice suddenly sounded beside Use. Katniss's sudden appearance beside me startled me. I instinctively turned to look at her and asked in surprise. When did you get back? Just now, Katniss replied indifferently. I secretly breathed a sigh of relief. I thought Katniss had overheard our entire conversation. She shifted her gaze from me to Pansy, her eyes showing a hint of suspicion. What were you two just talking about? Telling James Bond to go with you. Go where? Before Pansy could speak, I quickly interjected. Pansy wanted to go to the restroom, but she's a scaredy cat. She heard this hotel's restroom is haunted, so she didn't dare to go alone and wanted me to go with her. Pansy stared at me with wide eyes, not expecting me to come up with such a lame excuse. Stop spouting nonsense in front of me. Pansy, let's go home. What are your plans? Katniss shot me a glare and then asked Pansy. You go ahead. I have to visit my grandfather in a little while. Alright then. Say hello to Grandpa Parkinson for me. Katniss nodded, a faint smile on her face. With that, without caring whether I wanted to or not, she grabbed my arm and dragged me outside. As Katniss pulled me away, I unconsciously glanced back at Pansy, and found that this cute girl was also staring at me, her eyes seemingly filled with complex emotions. Seeing me turn back, Pansy, as if her thoughts had been exposed, immediately looked away. Back in the car, Katniss kept staring at me, her gaze filled with intense scrutiny. What are you looking at? You're making me shy. I couldn't help but complain. This woman's gaze was too cold. An ordinary person would find it hard to endure. Are you interested in Pansy? Katniss suddenly asked in a cold voice. What did you say? Hearing Katniss's words, I was immediately stunned. Katniss snorted coldly and said in a warning tone, you know what I said. Pansy is naive, but I'm not. I can't control your private life, that's true. But if you make a move on my best friend, I won't let you off the hook. I chuckled softly, my expression also turning serious. But Ms. Everdeen, isn't this part of my private life? As long as I don't violate the contract, I can do whatever I want, and you can't control it, right? Hearing me call her Ms. Everdeen, Katniss's frown deepened, and her voice grew even colder. Eve said it. Pansy is my best friend. You are not to have any ideas about her. Anyone else is your business. Heh. They smirked and said nothing more. The car immediately fell into an unusual silence. A high-end coffee shop in Gotham City, a woman with bright red lipstick sat quietly in a corner. Soon, the coffee shop door was gently pushed open. A woman wearing a mask and a gray baseball cap quietly entered. The woman carefully scanned the shop, and seeing the figure in the corner, she quickly walked over and said, What did you want to see me about? The woman in the mask sat down, showing no courtesy to Regina George. Regina said leisurely, Big star, don't be in such a hurry. It's been a while since we last met. It's rare to have a chance to sit together. Can't we have a proper chat? With that, she called the waiter and ordered 2 lattes. The woman in the mask snorted coldly. Though not loud, it was full of contempt. Regina, given our relationship, you can drop the act. As soon as she said this, A flash of anger appeared in Regina's eyes. She took a deep breath and put a smile back on her face. Lois Lane, at least we used to be good sisters. There's no need to be so tense when we meet. Besides, I have some good news for you. That's right. The woman called Lois Lane was my ex-girlfriend, James Bond's, now a famous star in the entertainment industry. Hearing Regina say this, a hint of curiosity mixed with suspicion immediately flashed in Lois' eyes. She had already been guessing why Regina wanted to see her. Now, Regina's words were like a stone thrown into her heart. Finally, she couldn't hold back her curiosity. What is it? Regina stared at Lois and slowly uttered a sentence. James Bond. You haven't forgotten him, have you? The words had just left her mouth when Regina faintly noticed Lois's hand on the table tremble slightly. Although Lois was wearing a mask and sunglasses, hiding her eyes and expression, with her years of understanding of Lois, Regina could guess her mood at that moment. When Lois was just starting out, the two had indeed been close sisters. However, the fame and fortune of the entertainment industry, and the complex conflicts of interest, were like a sharp knife that gradually severed their friendship, eventually leading to a rift. But regarding the matter between Lois and James Bond, Regina still knew a little. And a few days ago, at a lavish cocktail party, Regina had personally seen me appear with the CEO of Stark Industries, Katniss Everdeen, and his boyfriend and girlfriend no less. Regina realized this was definitely great news she could use to provoke Lois. He's in Gotham City. I saw him at a cocktail party a few days ago. Lois finally couldn't hold back, asking a bit hastily, he's in Gotham City. Regina chuckled softly, her smile carrying a hint of barely perceptible cunning. That's right. He's doing very well for himself now, appearing at the party with CEO Katniss Everdeen. You know Katniss, right? Hearing the name Katniss Everdeen, Lois was stunned, then filled with shock and doubt. As a well-known figure in Gotham, how could Lois not know Katniss? The two had even collaborated before. Because of this, Lois was even more bewildered. She really didn't understand how I could have appeared at the party with Katniss. In her perception, I was just an ordinary person. And Katniss stood at the top of the pyramid, surrounded by elites from all walks of life. The two of them were like two parallel lines that should never intersect. How could they have a common point? Guess what capacity they appeared in? He had boyfriend and girlfriend. Hearing this news, all of Lois's defenses collapsed in an instant. Her initial elegant posture disappeared without a trace. Her body suddenly leaned forward, her movements hasty and panicked. She took off the sunglasses on her face, staring at the composed Regina in front of her as if she wanted to swallow her whole. What did you say? Their boyfriend and girlfriend. I saw it with my own eyes and heard it with my own ears. If you don't believe me, you can ask someone else. After all, you know many influential people. If you weren't busy, you probably would have gone to that party too, right? Lois felt as if her heart was being pierced by thousands of sharp needles. Waves of sharp pain washed over her, so painful she could barely breathe. She never expected that while she was longing day and night to rekindle her old love with me, she would receive such a devastating blow. Thanks for the news, Lois managed to squeeze out, as if using all her strength. With that, she didn't want to stay a second longer in front of Regina. She immediately stood up and stumbled out of the coffee shop. Regina watched her panicked retreating figure, a cold smile curling on her lips. Seeing Lois's pathetic state as she left, her heart was filled with satisfaction. Her goal had been achieved. Rushing out of the coffee shop and back to her car, Lois collapsed onto the steering wheel, sobbing uncontrollably. She cried until she was almost exhausted, as if she could collapse at any moment. But the strength within her still propped up her body. Whether what Regina said was true or false, Lois decided she had to see me one more time. Some things were better asked directly. Ever since I became Katniss's fake boyfriend, I spent every day memorizing the documents she gave me. Katniss had warned me that if her parents came later and I made a mistake in front of them, she would make my life miserable. But then again, although this girl had a cold personality, she was quite relaxed with me. Besides being on call at all times, she usually left me to my own devices, letting me go wherever I wanted and do whatever I wanted. As long as I could get to her within an hour of her call, it was fine. Thinking about it, this money was quite easy to earn. Just back from the bar, I pushed open the door to Katniss's villa and saw her sitting quietly on the living room sofa. Hearing the sound at the door, she tilted her head slightly to look, and seeing it was me, she withdrew her indifferent gaze and continued to focus on the book in her hand. I changed my shoes and went straight upstairs without saying hello. After taking a shower in the bathroom and changing my clothes, I walked out of the bathroom and froze. Katniss was in my room, sitting on a chair with her legs crossed, constantly observing my bedroom. What are you doing in here? I secretly rejoiced. Fortunately, I had a similar embarrassing experience before. This time, I had carefully dressed properly before leaving the bathroom. Otherwise, with Katniss's habit of barging in, I would have been seen completely naked by her again. That would be too embarrassing. This is my territory. Do I need to report to you before entering? Katniss said indifferently, her eyes still scanning my room. I retorted, fine. Next time you come into my room, if you see something you shouldn't, don't call me a pervert. Outsiders might think I'm taking advantage of you. As soon as I said this, Katniss immediately frowned, her face showing displeasure, her cold eyes locking onto me. Katniss didn't understand why I wasn't afraid of her. In the company, her subordinates were all respectful, not even daring to breathe too loudly. But I was so casual, completely disregarding her authority. Clearly, in this cooperative relationship, she was the one in control. Katniss, let's be honest. Why do you always look at me so coldly? We're partners, not enemies. Do you have to be like this? It's as if I did something to you. In a moment of impulsiveness, I blurted out the words in my heart. As soon as I said them, I knew I had gone too far. Sure enough, hearing these words, Katniss was so angry she slammed the table, glared at me furiously, and coldly shouted, "What did you say? How dare you be so insolent in front of me? I'll deduct your money." Mentioning money was like grabbing Maya Chill's heel. I immediately admitted my mistake. Okay, my fault. I shouldn't have said that. Katniss, don't be angry. Seeing me rarely give in, Katniss's anger subsided a lot. At the same time, she discovered that the way to deal with me was to deduct my money. Remember, I am your employer. I am your boss. We are in a superior, subordinate relationship. Katniss emphasized each word. Okay, I know, I said helplessly. Katniss looked at me for a moment, then suddenly softened her tone and asked, I heard from Pansy that you've practiced boxing. Boxing, kickboxing, have you practiced them all? And nodded. Katniss looked me up and down, nodded slightly, and said, then come with me tonight. I asked suspiciously, to do what? Protect you. Katniss raised an eyebrow, and snorted. Does being a bodyguard like this cost extra? This needs to be calculated separately, I said seriously. Hearing the words extra money, Katniss didn't immediately refuse, nor did she agree. She crossed her arms and quietly looked at me, her beautiful eyes sparkling. Seeing her silence, I got a little anxious because this concerned my vital interests. So I cleared my throat and explained further, look, when we signed the original contract, I only agreed to be your fake boyfriend, not your bodyguard. These are two completely different things. Now you want me to play both roles, being your boyfriend and ensuring your safety. Shouldn't you pay me for two jobs? What I'm saying is reasonable, isn't it? I spread my hands, my eyes showing sincerity. To me, money matters must be taken seriously. Who doesn't want more money, right? But unexpectedly, Katniss said something, but it's only natural for a boyfriend to protect his girlfriend, isn't it? Do I need to teach you this logic? Her words left me stunned. My mouth fell open, and a whole bunch of prepared arguments seemed to get stuck in my throat, unable to come out. Because what Katniss said seemed to make a lot of sense. In a normal romantic relationship, it did seem natural for a boyfriend to protect his girlfriend. I was choked up and didn't know how to respond. Then it's settled. Tonight, Draco's father, from Malfoy Corp, has invited me to dinner. He said it's to apologize in person and discuss business cooperation. I'm worried they might pull some tricks, so I'm asking you to come along. Katniss looked at my embarrassed state, a barely perceptible hint of triumph curling on her lips. I sighed softly and said helplessly, then can't you just bring a bodyguard? Katniss shook her head slightly and explained patiently, it's not appropriate to bring a bodyguard on this occasion. On the surface, it's an apology dinner and it's under the guise of a business exchange. In such a private and communicative setting, bringing a bodyguard would make me seem too guarded. But bringing you is different. In their eyes, you are also a main character. Accompanying me as my boyfriend is not abrupt and can also ensure my safety to some extent. One stone, two birds. I thought about it. What Katniss said made sense, so I finally nodded. Katniss's voice softened a few notches. Remember to dress handsomely then. With that, she turned and left the room. When am I ever not handsome? I touched my face and muttered to myself. On the other side, Katniss returned to her room. The phone on her dressing table suddenly rang. Hello, Miss Lane, why this sudden call? Katniss answered the phone, a polite smile on her face. She and Lois Lane had met at a high-end party a long time ago. At that time, Lois was just a rising newcomer in the entertainment industry, not as famous and glamorous as she was now. They knew each other and had collaborated a few times. Their relationship couldn't be called good, but it certainly wasn't bad. Everding, are you free? I'd like to meet with you, Lois said over the phone, hesitating for a moment before finally mustering the courage. I'm free today. You can choose the time and place. Katniss answered decisively. All right. 5 p.m. at the No See No Leave coffee shop. Lois immediately gave the time and place. After hanging up, Lois clutched the phone in her hand, her face a mask of complex emotions. I was listlessly sitting on the living room sofa, flipping through the documents Katniss had given me, trying to memorize more information to avoid making a fool of myself later. Just then I casually looked up and saw Katniss, exquisitely dressed, heading for the door. I subconsciously asked, "Where are you going?" Only after the words were out did I realize I was being a bit nosy. Katniss raised an eyebrow, a look of surprise in her eyes. Are you curious? I was taken aback, then shook my head. Curious about what? Katniss snorted lightly, then opened the door and walked out. At 5 p.m., Katniss arrived on time. In a private room at the coffee shop, she saw the famous star. Because it was a relatively private room, Lois wasn't wearing a mask or sunglasses like she would in public, fully revealing her exquisitely carved face. In the entertainment industry, she was called a goddess of beauty by countless people. After all, in college, she was the only campus belle, and her figure was even more graceful and charming. However, despite her excellent personal conditions, at this moment, facing Katniss, Lois, for some reason, felt a lack of confidence in her own beauty and figure. Katniss was too beautiful, the kind of beauty that surpassed ordinary people. Not only were her features exquisitely perfect, but she also exuded a natural air of confidence and pride. Miss Lane, have you ordered coffee yet? Katniss sat down opposite Lois, who had already ordered 2 lattes. I remember you used to drink this when we discussed business. Lois's lips curved slightly in a faint smile. Katniss just smiled faintly in response. In her heart, she wanted to say that people's hobbies and tastes inevitably change over time, and with life circumstances. While stirring her coffee, Katniss asked casually, I wonder if Miss Lane sought me out privately this time for a new collaboration. Normally, this sort of thing is handled by your manager contacting my side. Business collaborations require process and standards. Meeting privately like this is a bit of a surprise. Lois shook her head slightly, her expression heavy, as if she were hesitating about something. After a moment, she slowly said, It's not about work. It has nothing to do with business. Then is Miss Lane just looking to reminisce with me? A hint of surprise flashed in Katniss's calm eyes. Lois pursed her red lips and said softly, I have a few personal questions to ask you. Katniss smiled lightly. Go ahead. Lois slowly raised her head, her eyes fixed on Katniss, her expression extremely serious, even solemn. Is James Bond your boyfriend? Hearing this, a flash of astonishment immediately appeared on Katniss's face. She had never expected Lois to mention me. Do these two know each other? Lois kept staring at Katniss, the impatience in her eyes seeming to want to pull the answer from her mouth. Katniss narrowed her eyes slightly, quickly weighing the situation. She thought it over and decided she couldn't answer casually, not knowing the relationship between Lois and me. So she didn't directly answer Lois's question but asked back, Does Miss Lane know him? Hearing Katniss's counter-question, Lois's lips moved, wanting to say something in a hurry, but the words seemed to be blocked by an invisible force. He was my college classmate. We were very close. As she said this, a look of nostalgia flashed in her eyes, as if she had returned to that time. So that's how it is. Katniss had a sudden realization, but she was still a little surprised. This James Bond guy was close to the famous star Lois Lane. It was truly unexpected. So what is your relationship with him? Lois couldn't hold back her impatience and asked again. Yes, he's my boyfriend now. Katniss hadn't wanted to admit it, since our relationship was fake, but she had no choice. She had already publicly announced our relationship. If she denied it now, and Lois spread the word, it could cause unnecessary trouble. The act had to be played to the end. The moment she heard Katniss admit it, Lois felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes immediately dimmed. Seeing this, Katniss thought to herself, her relationship with me is probably not just a simple friendship. She noticed the look of pain and loss on Lois's face, which didn't seem like the reaction of someone who had just found out an old classmate had a girlfriend. A more unbelievable thought flashed through Katniss's mind. Could Lois have feelings for me? As soon as this thought appeared, even she was startled. After all, Lois was a famous star, surrounded by countless suitors. There was no shortage of outstanding men. Why would she have special feelings for me? Miss Lane, are you all right? Katniss tilted her head and stared at Lois for a moment, her eyes showing concern. Hearing Katniss's question, Lois just shook her head weakly, her voice hoarse. I'm fine. I've made a fool of myself in front of you. She forced a smile, trying to hide her gaffe. Can you tell me about you and James Bond? Katniss took a sip of her coffee and calmly asked Lois. Seeing Lois's soulless appearance, the curiosity in Katniss's heart was like a fire doused with oil, burning even more fiercely. She really wanted to know what had happened between this dazzling star of the entertainment industry and me to make her lose her composure so completely upon hearing I was her boyfriend. But how could Lois easily tell Katniss the story between her and me? At least for now, Katniss was her rival in love. I'm sorry this is a private matter between James Bond and me. It's probably not convenient to talk about it. Please understand. She lowered her head slightly, trying to hide her eyes. Seeing that the other party didn't want to talk, Katniss didn't press the issue. She couldn't force Lois to talk, could she? Besides, if Lois didn't talk, she could just ask the guy directly when she got home. She didn't believe I could keep my mouth shut under her interrogation. Thank you, Mr. Everdeen. Lois stood up, bowed slightly to thank Katniss, and then quickly grabbed her bag and left the private room. Only Katniss remained in the room. She didn't rush to leave, still sitting elegantly with her legs crossed. James Bond. Oh, James Bond. So you have some little secrets too. How interesting. A glint of light flashed in Katniss's eyes, and a knowing smile slowly formed on her lips. Katniss put down her cup, took out her phone from her bag, and called me. I was listlessly looking at the documents at that moment. When I received Katniss's call, I immediately asked, tell me the location. Katniss was slightly taken aback, not expecting me to be so direct. But she didn't think much of it and said indifferently, coffee shop. You have 40 minutes to get here. Take any car you want. After hanging up, I changed my clothes and left immediately. Katniss sat in the private room, waiting for nearly 30 minutes. Then she took the packaged cold coffee and walked out of the coffee shop, standing by the road to wait. James Bond, if you dare to be late, you're dead meat. Katniss looked around and didn't see her car, so she muttered to herself. On the dot, I finally appeared in her line of sight. But with just one look, Katniss was so angry her eyes were spitting fire. She almost fainted, and the cold coffee in her hand was nearly thrown away. The reason was none other than that I had come on a bicycle, and a public one at that, the kind you see everywhere on the streets. Katniss watched my figure getting closer and closer, her chest heaving with anger, her breathing becoming more rapid. The next second, Katniss turned and walked back into the coffee shop, the heels of her high heels stomping heavily on the ground, making angry clicking sounds. Seeing this, I quickly sped up and shouted, Katniss, where are you going? But Katniss acted as if she hadn't heard, her steps not pausing for a moment, walking straight into the coffee shop. I sped to the coffee shop door, hastily parked the bike, scanned the code on my phone to pay, and then hurriedly chased after her. Sir, do you have a reservation? As soon as I entered, a smiling waitress asked. I quickly scanned the hall, but didn't see Katniss. I asked the waitress, a beautiful girl just came in, holding something. Did you see her? The waitress looked thoughtful, tilted her head slightly, and said softly, don't rush, sir. Let me think. Seeing this, I said nothing and secretly slipped her a red envelope. Do you remember now? The waitress was immediately overjoyed, secretly putting the red envelope in her pocket. She bowed respectfully, extended her hand, and said, the lady just now is in private room number 1. Just follow me. After leading me in, the waitress found a hidden corner, and seeing no one around, she took out the red envelope I had given her. But when she opened it, there was only 5 yuan inside. She couldn't believe her eyes, and even thought she had missed something. So the waitress quickly took out the 5 yuan, turned the red envelope upside down, and carefully checked every corner. But besides this 5 yuan, there was really nothing else. So stingy, pretending to be rich when you have no money. What a terrible man. What's so great about being handsome? At this moment, I was sitting opposite Katniss, looking at the lad in front of me. I reached out and touched it. It was cold. Is this for me? How long had I been writing? Rushing all the way. My throat was so thirsty it felt like it was on fire. Seeing this cold lat was like seeing a savior. I thought, whether it was for me or not, I'd drink it to quench my thirst. I was about to pick up the cold lat and drink it in one gulp. But just as my hand touched it, Katniss suddenly shouted, that's not for you. I froze but didn't say anything more. I thought, if it's not for me, I'll just call the waiter and order another one. I was about to stand up. Just as I was about to get up, Katniss suddenly took a packaged cold coffee from the bag beside her and placed it on the table with a thud. "This is yours." Katniss had actually packaged a cup for me. Had the sun risen from the west? I took the cold coffee from Katniss's hand and looked at her in surprise. Katniss crossed her arms and said coldly, "What are you looking at? I'm not charging you for it. It's on me." With that, she turned her face to the side as if she didn't want to look at me. I wasn't so stingy as to let Katniss pay for a cup of coffee. I was just curious why she had thoughtfully packaged a cup for me. I just smiled lightly, said thank you, and then inserted the straw to drink. Katniss's tone suddenly changed, her eyes showing a cold look. "Explain yourself. Why did you ride a bike here? If you can't convince me, you're finished." Speaking of this, I had something to say. As if I had found the perfect excuse, I gently slapped the table, my face full of helplessness. "Big sister, do you know what time it is? It's the evening rush hour. The whole city is gridlocked. You told me to get here in 40 minutes. How is that possible? I've calculated it carefully, considered all modes of transportation. Only a bicycle isn't affected by traffic, unless I can fly. Otherwise, during rush hour, it's absolutely impossible to get here in 40 minutes. After I said this, Katniss also realized the problem. She pursed her red lips, her tone softening a few notches. "Alright, I won't pursue it this time. I'll call someone to drive us back later." But she quickly realized something and frowned, asking, "What did you just call me?" "Big sister." I secretly thought, oops, but my face remained calm, pretending to be innocent. I answered seriously, "I didn't. I called you Katniss. You must have misheard. How would I dare to call you big sister?" Katniss stared at me for a moment, then withdrew her gaze. "Wait for me to finish my coffee." Katniss seemed to suddenly remember something important. "Do you know Lois Lane?" I had just stood up. Hearing Katniss's words, I froze, then said in a teasing tone, "Lois Lane, haha, the famous star." Although I had disguised it well, Katniss still caught a fleeting hint of ridicule and self-deprecation on my face. Katniss hesitated for a moment, but finally opened her mouth. "The person I met today was Lois Lane." My eyes trembled slightly, then I smiled lightly. "And then?" Katniss stared at me and slowly said, "You two aren't just classmates. Are you?" The private room suddenly fell into silence. I stood in front of the chair, looking down at Katniss, a strange look in my eyes. Katniss, on the other hand, sat firmly in her chair, her expression calm, her head held high elegantly, not showing any weakness in the face of me. "I don't want to talk about Lois Lane," I said, my voice a bit stiff. "Are you curious about her?" Katniss slowly shook her head, a hint of playfulness in her voice. "I'm curious about the story between you two." I sneered, a hint of contempt in my laughter. I shrugged, trying to appear relaxed. "What if I don't want to talk about it?" "You just drank my cold coffee." Katniss snorted lightly, a cunning glint in her eyes, as if she had me in her grasp. I knew Katniss wasn't that kind. So she was waiting for me here. "Then I'll just order a cup to pay you back." "I'm not backing down." Katniss seemed to have expected me to say that. Her delicate chin lifted slightly, her eyes exuding a natural air of pride. "No, I want the exact same cup." I frowned tightly, my eyes full of helplessness and frustration as I looked at Katniss. I didn't expect her to be so persistent about this. "What does this story between me and Lois Lane have to do with her?" Katniss raised an eyebrow and looked at me, her eyes full of provocation, as if to say, "Let's see how you deal with this." But the next second, my action left her completely stunned. I just put my hand in my mouth as if I wanted to fish out the cold coffee I had just drunk. Stop. What are you doing? Is it that serious? So disgusting. What kind of person are you?" Katniss's initial composure collapsed, her face showing extreme disgust, wanting to get as far away from me as possible. She completely understood that when she was with me, she should never try to guess what I would do. "Didn't you tell me to pay you back?" "This is the only way I can pay you back." I put on a serious face, speaking and acting at the same time, even putting my hand in my mouth. "Stop. What are you doing? Are you threatening me?" Katniss glared, shouting coldly, "You're my boss. How would I dare to threaten you? Aren't you the one threatening me?" I replied indifferently, my voice tinged with sarcasm. Katniss was so choked up by my words that she couldn't speak. She was so angry her chest heaved violently. She took a deep breath, trying to suppress the anger in her heart. After glaring at me resentfully a few times, she took out her phone from her bag and made a call. "Miss Leo, arrange for a driver to pick me up at the coffee shop," Katniss said to the person on the other end of the phone, but her eyes were glaring at me. I directly ignored Katniss's murderous gaze, casually sat down on the side, crossed my legs, took out my phone from my pocket, and started playing a small game engrossed. Back at the villa, Katniss was in a terrible mood. As soon as she entered the door, she threw her handbag haphazardly. The bag drew an arc in the air and landed with a thud in the corner of the sofa. Her eyes still held a hint of lingering anger. She glanced at me, snorted coldly, and without looking back, went straight upstairs. I had just sat down on the sofa when my phone suddenly vibrated. I found it was a message from Pansy. The two had added each other as friends at the cocktail party that day, but they hadn't contacted each other much since then. This was the first time Pansy had messaged me. James Bond, are you free tomorrow? The message was accompanied by a cute emoji, trying to make the tone more intimate. Seeing the message, I guessed Pansy's intention and directly typed, no. What about the day after tomorrow? Pansy didn't seem to want to give up, and quickly messaged back. Not the day after tomorrow either. I didn't even have to think. What about the day after tomorrow? Pansy persisted. Still no. I looked at the screen a little helplessly, thinking to myself, why is this girl so persistent? Pansy asked directly, so when are you free? Her persistent questioning confirmed my suspicion. She definitely wanted me to help her beat someone up again. I sighed softly and still typed a polite refusal. I don't know either. I'll let you know when I am free. Pansy, of course, wasn't stupid. One glance and she could see that I, James Bond, was being perfunctory. Her heart immediately filled with frustration. So she used her ultimate move. At this moment, I had just returned to my room and was about to take a shower and relax when I heard my phone buzz repeatedly. What is this girl sending again? Is she threatening me again? I muttered, picked up the phone on the table, and opened the chat with Pansy. But when I saw the pictures Pansy had sent, I just felt my head buzz. My eyes widened like saucers, and I unconsciously gulped, my nose almost bleeding. The screen was filled with provocative photos, about 100 of them. Why are you sending me these? Is this a serious threat? I stared blankly, my mind still in a daze. I never expected a Lolita-style girl who looked so innocent to have such a hot side. Isn't this a contrast? James Bond, are these pictures beautiful? It took me a lot of effort to take them. Pansy sent another message at this time. Not text, but a voice message. As soon as the voice message played, Pansy's characteristic voice sounded. Her already soft voice was deliberately squeaky, with a hint of coquettishness that made one's bones tingle. I still maintained a bit of rationality and typed back, what are you doing? Am I that kind of person? Do you think you can bribe me with a few pictures? On the other end of the phone, Pansy, seeing this message, was so angry she almost threw her phone. A few pictures. There are more than 150 of them. Men are such hypocrites. Pansy bit her lip, glaring at the chat with me, James Bond, her face full of anger. This James Bond is so annoying. Besides being handsome, having a good figure, a nice voice, and good skills, he has nothing else. Pansy couldn't contain her anger. While muttering resentfully, she threw her phone hard onto the bed. She stood with her hands on her hips, her chest heaving like a ruffled cat. But less than half a minute later, she picked up her phone again and couldn't help but make a video call to me. Seeing the video call, I frowned slightly and quickly typed, I am about to take a shower. I thought this reason would make Pansy back off. After all, it was reasonable. It's fine if you're not wearing anything. I wanted to see your muscles anyway. Didn't you say you practiced boxing? Your muscles must be plentiful and beautiful. Send a few pictures for me to admire. Pansy replied almost instantly, accompanied by a heart emoji. Seeing this message, a black line appeared on my forehead. I was a bit speechless. Having been in society for so many years, I had met many scoundrels. But this was the first time I had met such a straightforward female scoundrel like Pansy. What's there to see? This is paid content. You can't see it, I replied, half-jokingly. But what I didn't expect was that the next second, a transfer notification popped up on my phone screen. Pansy had directly transferred 5,000 yuan. The dazzling amount on the screen left me stunned. I never expected Pansy to be so serious. Are you serious? I was just kidding. I don't know why, but although Pansy was very stubborn about this, which was a headache, I suddenly found her quite interesting. I don't care. They sent you pictures. It's only fair if you send a few muscle pictures too. Pansy sent another voice message, her voice full of coquettishness, making me not know whether to laugh or cry. I hesitated for a moment, thinking I had seen quite a few of Pansy's pictures. Even though she sent them herself, I had still taken advantage of her. So, I picked up my phone and casually took a few pictures of my abs and sent them to Pansy. The next second, I retracted them, thinking my hand was fast enough, only giving Pansy 10 seconds to look. But it was true that for every clever move, there was a clever one. At the same time I sent them, Pansy's quick mind was at work. She didn't foolishly click to see them, but, based on her prediction, quickly saved the pictures first. Seeing me retract the pictures, Pansy's lips curled into a triumphant smile. Lucky I had foresight, or I would have been tricked by you. Pansy snorted lightly, her voice full of pride in her own intelligence. Then, she eagerly opened her photo gallery, lightly tapped on the heart one picture and began to slowly admire it. The picture of my abs, James Bond's. In the picture, the lines of my abs were as clear as if they were carved. Every muscle exuded strength and masculine charm. Pansy stared straight. Pansy deliberately adjusted her emotions and sent a voice message in a faint angry tone. James Bond, how could you do that? I didn't even get a clear look. Hearing this, the corner of my mouth lifted, revealing my white teeth. I also sent a voice message. Then you can only blame yourself. I sent the pictures. We're even. I'm going to take a shower now. Chat later when I am free. With that, I threw my phone aside, humming a little tune as I went into the bathroom. Hearing this voice message, Pansy's face was full of triumph. She even set the picture of my abs as her phone wallpaper. The next evening, when Katniss returned to the villa, she saw that I was already dressed neatly. Without saying much, she shook the car keys in her hand. Let's go. You dry. I walked up to Katniss and took the keys from her hand. What else? The Chinese restaurant on the 7th floor of the Century Hotel, Katniss said as she walked out. The two went to the car, got in, and I started the car. My eyes were on the road ahead, but my peripheral vision glanced at Katniss buckling her seatbelt beside me. I hesitated for a moment, struggling internally. I thought that drinking was common at business occasions. It wouldn't be convenient for a woman like Katniss to drink too much. So I asked, there will probably be drinking on this occasion, right? Let me drink for you. Katniss, who was looking down and adjusting her seatbelt, froze when she heard my words. She slowly brushed away a few strands of hair from her forehead, her eyes like lightning looking at me. She snorted coldly. Not asking for money anymore. You're making me feel strange. In her eyes, my sudden enthusiasm must have had a motive. After all, in the past, when we were together, I had often made a fuss about money. I laughed awkwardly, trying to make my smile look more sincere. Do I look like a money grubber? Katniss looked at me coldly, her eyes full of scrutiny, and sneered. I heard you. Who says James Bond isn't greedy for money? Katniss would be the first to disagree. In her impression, every time it involved benefits, I would fight for every penny, not giving an inch. It depends on the specific situation. Since we're already here, isn't it convenient for me to drink for you? I laughed awkwardly. Katniss withdrew her eyes, looked out the window, and said in a teasing tone, Don't worry, I don't need you to drink for me. My alcohol tolerance is not bad. Seeing this, I knew better than to say anything more. I didn't want to get a cold shoulder for my warm offer. So I just drove quietly. The car was silent for a while. Actually, sometimes I felt that Katniss's life was also very tiring. She was busy at the company during the day, and she had to attend business negotiations or parties. She was truly a busy person. But then I thought I was being nosy. Katniss earned money like it was nothing. Her assets and status were something many people couldn't reach in their entire lives. And I had a debt of 50,000, and nothing to my name. To be feeling sorry for someone else, thinking about it, was a bit ridiculous. Arriving at the Century Hotel, under the guidance of the staff, the two of them came to a private room and opened the door. Draco and his father immediately stood up, their faces beaming with smiles as they greeted Katniss. But the next second, when my figure, James Bond's, appeared in front of the two of them, the smiles on their faces immediately froze. It was clear that neither of them had expected me to come along. Katniss hadn't given any prior notice that she would bring someone else. Seeing the unnatural expressions on their faces, Katniss didn't explain much, just said indifferently, My boyfriend. Mr. Malfoy doesn't mind, does he? Draco's father was stunned. He quickly weighed the pros and cons in his mind. After a moment, a smile returned to his face. Mind what? Miss Everdene's boyfriend is not an outsider. Welcome, welcome. As he spoke, he extended his hand in an inviting gesture, trying to ease the sudden awkward atmosphere. Compared to his father, Draco was clearly far behind in terms of composure, especially in controlling his expressions. In the face of an unexpected guest, he still managed to maintain a smile and respond with polite words. But Draco didn't hide his emotions at all. He looked at me with a face full of displeasure, his eyes as if they were spitting fire. as if looking at an enemy. After all, last time at the cocktail party, his 2 henchmen were taken down by me. I, on the other hand, was extremely calm and composed. I naturally sat down, my eyes casually sweeping around the room. But I didn't even glance at Draco, as if he didn't exist. Seeing me so arrogant, the anger in Draco's heart flared up. His fist under the table unconsciously clenched, his eye glaring at me, full of resentment. He secretly gritted his teeth. Let you be arrogant for a while. Let's see how long you can be proud after I get Katniss. It's not too late to settle the score then. As if noticing his son's unusual emotions, his father, to ease the atmosphere, quickly stood up and carefully raised his wine glass. Miss Everdeen, a few days ago, my son, Draco, acted rashly and had a conflict with you and Mr. Bond. I'm truly sorry. Today, I'll punish myself with a glass as an apology to you both. His voice trembled slightly, every word showing humility, as if he were full of reverence for Katniss. With that, he tilted his head back and drank the glass of wine in one go, his decisive action showing his sincerity. Draco, although full of dissatisfaction, could only raise his glass under his father's signal, his voice stiff. Miss Everdeen, Mr. Bond, it was my fault for being ignorant before. If I have offended you in any way, I hope you will forgive me. With that, he also drank the glass. Katniss just looked at them indifferently, her eyes as calm as a deep lake, making it difficult to guess her thoughts. She didn't immediately raise her glass in response. As for me, needless to say, since I had come with Katniss, and she hadn't spoken, I naturally wouldn't easily open my mouth. I just watched the scene with interest. But watching a good show, the atmosphere in the room immediately grew cold. After Draco finished drinking, seeing that the other party didn't respond, he was also a bit embarrassed and quickly looked to his father for help. Draco's father narrowed his eyes slightly, giving his son a reassuring look, as if to say, calm down. Then, a smile returned to his face, and he asked carefully, Miss Everdeen, you see. Before he could finish, Katniss suddenly said coldly, finding someone to deal with my boyfriend, and a glass of wine is all it takes. Then wouldn't I, Katniss Everdeen, be too easy to bully? Hearing this, a smile flashed in my eyes. I couldn't help but applaud Katniss. This woman was truly domineering. My gaze towards Katniss had a little more admiration. But Draco's father seemed to have expected that Katniss wouldn't be so easily at peace. So he poured himself another glass of wine. He said to Katniss, Miss Everdeen, a glass of wine is certainly not enough to show my apology. So I've decided to give you a little concession in this collaboration. What kind of concession? Katniss raised an eyebrow, a hint of curiosity flashing in her usually cold eyes, looking at him with interest. Draco's father smiled, and began to talk about the content of this business collaboration with Katniss. Seeing their negotiation posture, I knew that for the time being, there was nothing for me to do. I ate and drank on the side with peace of mind, looking very leisurely. I have to say, at first, I really didn't want to come with Katniss. I found it troublesome. But after coming, I found it was quite enjoyable. I got to eat rare delicacies and drink fine wine, and I didn't even have to drink for Katniss. It was really too comfortable. I couldn't help but glance to the side and found that Katniss was negotiating with Draco's father, her emotions a little high, a faint smile on her lips. It must be that Draco's father's concessions satisfy her. As for Draco's appearance, it was a bit funny. He was holding a bottle of wine, respectfully standing by, constantly pouring wine for the two negotiating parties. His posture was exactly like a waiter's. Although he tried to force a smile, his eyes occasionally showed unwillingness and grievance. Noticing my gaze, Draco glared at me. But he only dared to be angry and not speak. Then, he obediently poured wine for the two of them. Soon, after drinking a lot of wine, I felt a little full and wanted to go to the restroom. I put down my chopsticks, wiped my mouth gently, leaned close to Katniss, and whispered, I'm going to the restroom for a bit. I'll be right back. Katniss turned to look at me, her eyes a little hazy. She nodded slightly as a reply. It was only then that I noticed her face was flushed, and her usually sharp eyes had become much softer. If you can't drink, let me. Don't force yourself, I whispered in her ear with concern. Katniss frowned and said softly, you should go to the restroom. I shrugged, a little helplessly stood up, and left the room. As soon as I left the room, the initial negotiation atmosphere seemed to have a subtle change. Draco's father, who was negotiating with Katniss, and Draco, who was pouring wine, both had a look of joy in their eyes, as if they had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. It was a pity that Katniss was already a little drunk and focused on the negotiation, not noticing this change. After going to the restroom and relieving myself, I immediately felt much lighter and more comfortable. I simply washed my face with cold water. Just as I was leaving the restroom, not far away, I ran into Draco's father. "Mr. Bond, I want to talk to you," Draco's father said to me indifferently. I found it a little strange. I didn't understand what Draco's father had to say to me. After thinking for a few seconds, I smiled. "What does Mr. Malfoy want to talk to me about?" Draco's father looked around and said, "Let's go somewhere else." I glanced in the direction of the private room, hesitated for a moment, and said, "Just here. Katniss is still waiting for me." Draco's father's face darkened slightly. His initially gentle expression immediately turned cold, his voice a bit stiff. "Mr. Bond, sometimes you shouldn't get too into character, or you'll easily confuse your real position." I stared at Draco's father for a moment, then suddenly smiled. "What does Mr. Malfoy mean by that?" Draco's father looked at me and sneered. "How much did Katniss Everdeen pay you?"